Welcome to Independent Sources. I'm Garry Pierre-Pierre. Since President Obama announced his plan to send 30,000 additional U.S. troops to Afghanistan, many of the media reports are focused on reactions from war-weary Americans and European allies. But how has the news played in Afghanistan itself and in Pakistan, the other major player in the war? On this edition of Independent Sources, we hear what's being reported in the Afghan and Pakistan media about the president's plans for war, peace, and troop withdrawal, and how the news is being received on the ground. We looked at an issue that has recently become a hot-button topic in the healthcare debate: abortion. We learn about plans for past and future editions of the Amsterdam News as the oldest black paper in New York celebrates its 100th anniversary. And we bring you coverage of the IPPIES Awards as the independent press celebrates its own. Those stories and news of the week after this.
It provides a platform for people who do not understand the mainstream language, the official language of a place, to be catered for, to be informed, to be educated, to be entertained.
Much skepticism remains in Washington and worldwide about President Obama's plans for a military surge in Afghanistan and a troop withdrawal beginning in mid-2011. How have the Afghan media and the Afghan people reacted to the president's announcement? And what about Pakistan? The president mentioned this neighboring country dozens of times in his 35-minute speech. Here to discuss these issues are Afghan journalists Syed Abdul Rahim and Jehangir Khattak, a Pakistani journalist who works with the New York Community Media Alliance. Welcome.
Thank you.
Syed, let's start with you. President Obama, just the other day, increased the troop level in Afghanistan by some 30,000 soldiers. What's the situation now in Afghanistan?
You know, it was already expected that he's going to send troops. But in reality, you know, in Afghanistan, the people actually were already not happy. Even politicians, I mean, because of the widespread civilian casualties, people were very worried about it. But you know, on the ground now, the politicians and the common public in generally, they know that it will never fix this problem. You know, historically, if you think about Afghanistan, you know, most of the population, we live close to this Durand line. This is the most populated area of the country. And already, you know, almost 70,000 American troops are close to this Durand line. And the more which Obama is going to send them, they are also going to the same area. So
when they all go in the same area,
I mean, mostly they are focused to this region, which is the vast majority.
And which region is that?
That's the southern and eastern part of the country.
Okay.
And historically, with Britishers, with Russians, all the big battles took place in this area. And this is the area, you know, that unfortunately the media really do not show. That, you know, the other NATO allies, their forces are in the north, which are not very populated area. And most of them are concerned, they don't want to send their troops to the south and east. Because here, when these troops are already there, that almost 70,000, and there's 30,000 more that are going, they are never going to solve this problem. And also, in one hand, America and their allies have imposed a government on Afghanistan which really does not represent this vast majority of the country. Okay. So in this region, you know, which we have this big Durand line, more than 1,200. We have very good relationship with these people, and when you call them these insurgents, all of them are not terrorists, and all of them are not Talibans, because of the corrupt regime and the widespread civilian casualties. People are opposed to this occupation, and they are freedom fighters. It's actually a fight of freedom.
Okay. Speaking of the Taliban, we were talking off camera earlier about the way they've been portrayed by the Western media. Are they the face of the opposition? What's the Taliban like? What is the Taliban? Quickly.
You know, historically, even if you talk about Taliban usually, you know, Pashtuns are religious people, there is no doubt. But whenever we were invaded by foreigners, so the Taliban are actually the religious students. They were always the first volunteers to join the battle against invasion. We have in our literature, in our poetry, we have they were actually, even during the battles with Britishers, they were also most of them were the common soldiers. The only thing, the new thing is that they came to the leadership, after 9/11, what happened in Afghanistan.
Let's switch the subject for a moment to your neighboring Pakistan. Jehangir, Pakistan finds itself in a very curious position where it is in the middle of a war. It either didn't ask, it didn't start, and yet now we hear almost every day bombings happening all over the country. What's the situation in Pakistan? How Pakistan is reacting to this?
So far, more than 3,000 Pakistanis have lost their lives in these bomb blasts. Initially, in the beginning, the public sentiment was in favor of these people who are carrying out these attacks, because many believe that it's not our war, it's America's war. There's no doubt that, of course, the Pakistanis did not have too many stakes in the beginning. But when the war started and things got complicated, and then the local factors and the international factors also started influencing the situation in the country, both politically and militarily, we saw that these Taliban received more strength, and they started a fight against the government. The government went into the deals, peace deals with them. Those didn't work. Many believe that it's a surrender before the terrorists.
Let me stop you 1 second, Jehangir. Who are they? Who's coordinating these bombings? Who's behind them?
It's a very complicated situation. Just to point out that, just Taliban are doing it, it may be a very simplistic approach, because now too many factors are involved in there.
Such as?
Such as those countries which want Pakistan a weak country. Those countries which feel that Pakistan
When you say those countries, are you talking about India?
Yes, because Pakistan, now there is a huge public sentiment within Pakistan, because they have seen, and on the television channel they are showing truckloads of Indian weapons being caught in the tribal areas. They have seen Indian explosives being used, and also they have seen a lot of people who have directly or indirectly been in touch with the people who have some sort of Indian connections. So there is a very strong doubt. I don't say that India is 100% involved, but I do say that there are increasing apprehensions and doubts about India's role.
Okay. Syed, Afghanistan is known as the graveyard of empires, and now the U.S. has decided it's going to make this its war, this administration. Can the U.S. win in Afghanistan, or is there such a thing as winning this conflict, this war?
The only solution is that they should exit. They should leave Afghanistan.
What happens next if they leave?
Of course, if they leave, nothing will happen. As they say that in 1992, what happened when we forgot Afghanistan, and that was because of the foreign intervention. We can solve our problems with our neighbors, and we have the ability. Afghanistan is a nation and will be a nation, and the strategic geographical location of Afghanistan is always that it will never, the chaos will happen. There will be some, because of the foreign intervention, there will be some ethnic conflicts, but that will not exist forever. We Afghans and Afghanistan have the ability to rule Afghanistan. The only thing, during the last 8 years, we have got nothing. We have been killed, we have been bombed. And also in the Western media, we have been portrayed like a very brute people.
Certainly. One final question, Syed, if I may. Can the Afghan army maintain the country? Can it hold the society together?
Yeah. The Afghan army, present army in Kabul, and the present puppet regime, they do not represent Afghanistan. The army which is made of all these soldiers are from the warlords and from definite ethnic warlords which actually do not represent any ethnic group of Afghanistan. I say if they allow the United States to allow our traditional Loya Jarga, we have which is made of scholars, which are made of tribal elders. They have this ability. Even they can bring, they know how to secure Afghanistan. This is a big problem. This is not their problem. Once they exit it, I know they forgot it. We say that America do not have permanent friends or enemies. So when their interests are there, we are not sure if America attacked Afghanistan on the basis of their strategic plan, or it was just a mistake of which they say George W. Bush. So if they leave Afghanistan, everything will be fine. Afghans have the ability.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. but I'm certain we'll have more discussions on this topic in the future. Sahid Abdul Rahim and Jehangir Khattak, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Now here's Abi Ishola with some other news.
Thanks, Gary. Here's a look at some headlines from the ethnic media. The Filipino Reporter writes that President Barack Obama has nominated the first African American to potentially become U.S. ambassador to the Philippines. Democratic politician Harry K. Thomas Jr. was once the Director General of the Foreign Service and the U.S. ambassador to Bangladesh in early 2000. Thomas will find out early next year if the Senate confirms him for the post. From New America Media, a recent study from the Pew Hispanic Center finds that many young Latinos are choosing family over higher education. 74% of the study's respondents, ages 16 to 25, with a high school diploma or less, are not enrolled in school and don't plan to go back. Some of the students said that they felt that it was their duty to take care of their families during these tough economic times. And finally, from the Amsterdam News, movie lovers are in luck. The National Black Programming Consortium and New York Public Libraries are offering free movie screenings at 3 public libraries in Harlem. The program includes 3 documentaries that highlight Ghanaian boxers, an Atlanta teen who travels to Ghana, and displaced Hurricane Katrina victims. The event will last through the end of December and will begin again in mid-January to June 2010. Those are just a few headlines from the ethnic media. Back to you, Gary.
Abortion didn't appear to be a major issue in the early days of the healthcare reform debate. Then, an amendment limiting abortion funding was added to the bill, which passed in the House of Representatives. Now, some senators are proposing a similar amendment, and healthcare reform could be in jeopardy. How is this battle over abortion rights viewed in ethnic and immigrant communities? Joining me in the studio for some insight into the issue is Mildred Antenor, a journalist and professor at Seton University. With us via Skype from Los Angeles is Rocio Córdoba. She is Executive Director of California Latinas for Reproductive Justice. Before we start, let's look at this ad by Noral Pro-Choice.
Why would politicians like Bart Stupak introduce abortion into America's healthcare debate? Why are they trying to make it more difficult than ever before for women to buy insurance coverage for abortion in the new healthcare system? Even if they use their own money, why? Because they want to impose one of the worst restrictions on a woman's right to choose in a generation. Go to prochoiceamerica.org today and call on your member of Congress to say no to anti-choice, anti-healthcare attacks.
Mildred, let's start with you. Let's answer the question, why?
Well, unfortunately, Gary, this for me is another situation where you have a lot of men, a lot of white men who are powerful, who are controlling, who are out of touch, and they're making these rules in their ivory towers. By the way, the Stupak Amendment will not affect them, but they're making these rules that will affect women, primarily minority women and women who are financially challenged. My question is, what are they going to do when these women actually they need financial help, they need financial support, they need spiritual support, they need parental support? Where are they when these problems arise? I mean, it's sort of like a marionette where they actually try to control people from a particular standpoint, but you know, the rules that they create don't really affect them at all.
Rocio, why?
Well, I agree. It's a very misguided policy, and in particular in California, where we have communities such as the Latina community and such as Latina women in particular, who have the least access to health care, the least access to health insurance. You have more than 1.4 million women, and 40% of Latinas are uninsured compared to white women. And this is just, one example of the many, many inequalities that we face. There's absolutely no reason other than putting one type of healthcare service in the political debate where it absolutely should not be. This should be about promoting broad access to health care, and that should include comprehensive reproductive health services for all people.
Rocio, there are some people who say that this is really a tactic from the right to divide and conquer those on the left. Do you agree with that assessment?
I agree that this has unfortunately become a political debate, and that's why we have formed a campaign from California to really demand from our leaders, from our political leaders, from our members of Congress of California to take access to health care and health insurance out of the political debate. It should be about promoting access to health care and not about putting women's health and lives on the negotiating table.
Mildred, there are already numerous restrictions at the federal level on abortions. Now, how is this bill more restrictive? What is it in this situation that will make it even more difficult for women to have abortions?
Okay, this is something where you really have to read it in general, and you also have to read it in between the lines. I mean, there's what is said and then there's what is said. Basically, they're saying that women have to pay for their own abortions, all right? There are some exceptions, and I think some of the exceptions are that if the woman's health is in danger, not her life, but if her health is in danger, if there are some mental anxieties, mental anguish, where the woman wants to commit suicide and that sort of thing, of course, that is something that the Stupak Amendment does not cover. They will cover, however, if the woman's health, if her life is in danger. Now, what's interesting is, it's going to be interesting to see how the insurance companies put a spin on this, because they have a history of denying claims. And I'm sure that if this actually is passed, you're going to have a lot of insurance companies saying, well, your life is not threatened, so we're not going to cover it. Okay. You know, so that's really an issue. And also, not only does it affect white women, but it also affects minority women much more. Because on the whole, you have women who make, when you compare women to men, we make generally between 72 and 79 cents to the dollar. That's for women in general. Black women and minority women make much less. So it's going to hurt them a lot more in terms of the overall female population.
Rocio, how do women, usually poor women in particular, pay for abortions nowadays?
Well, it's very clear that access to abortion services already, low-income women in particular, already face tremendous hurdles. And there is already a Medicaid ban on funding abortion services. And even in states where abortion services are paid by public funds, there are additional burdens in terms of income, in terms of transportation, and in terms of other aspects of just accessing that service. And so what we have seen, we at California Latinas for Reproductive Justice, who work firsthand with our communities, see that the last thing that we need is another barrier to health services. We see the repercussions of the lack of access to services in some very disproportionate reproductive health disparities. We see, for example, Latina women who have the highest rates of cervical cancer, who die more from breast cancer. And these are just examples of what happens when you don't have access to screenings.
Mildred, how is the ethnic and community media covering this issue? What are some of the debates going on?
Well, most of the women, in terms of minority women, they are against this. I mean, I think whenever you put any kind of barrier on a woman's life, you know, it makes her want to stand up and say something. But I also want to piggyback on something that Rocio said. Okay. This, I think, is going to set the women's movement back at least 100 years.
That's far?
Yes, I really do. I think you're going to see a lot of back alley abortions. I think you're going to see a lot of women dying from abortions that are faulty, and they die from infections and all sorts of things. I mean, this is really a setback, and it's a scary thing.
What are the chances of this passing? Is this it?
That's a good question. I think that we're inching toward it passing. And I think this is something that we should really be, really should not be a surprise. This Stupak Amendment is something that we should have seen coming within the last 10, 15 years. I mean, abortion is something that's very polarizing. It's a conversation that puts people on the left and to the right. And with the conversation that we've been having, with all of the political campaigns for the past, 16 years, you can, I mean, if you really kind of look between the lines, you can actually see it coming. I think it has a very good chance of passing.
Rocio, when you look at this bill, I mean, Mildred has laid out a very dire scenario. Is this better than nothing, or is this worth it? Should we just nix this whole health care bill because of this, or should we go with this because we need a health care reform bill?
In our opinion, we will continue to fight, and we have been joining with thousands of other allies in not just in the Latino community, in communities of color and immigrant communities, because we're equally concerned about ensuring that immigrants have access to health care. And we have been fighting for the last several months since this debate started. We have to ensure that our politicians really, if they really want to put health care reform forward, that they not let one type of service get in the way of that.
What about you? What do you think, Mildred? Is this better than nothing, or what is your position?
Oh, I don't think it's better than nothing. I think we certainly need healthcare reform, but it needs to be tweaked. And besides what Rocio just said, women in general also have the power to make something happen. We can write to our local politicians, our local freeholders, our local congressmen and assemblymen, and let them know that this is something that we're not going to stand for. And also with the current administration in the White House, they've made it sort of very see-through, very transparent, where you can actually contact the White House via web, via email, and actually write to the politicians, write to Barack Obama and let him know that you're not happy with this. So this is something that we can do from our own point of view.
Unfortunately, we'll have to leave it at that. Mildred Antenor and Rocio Córdoba, thanks for joining us. We'll be right back.
You promised me the world. Is this what you had in mind?
Every choice we make has a consequence. Help EarthShare and its members restore balance to the world. Visit earthshare.org and see what you can do. EarthShare, one environment, one simple way to care for it.
The Amsterdam News is 100 years old this year, and New York's oldest black newspaper celebrated that achievement recently at a star-studded gala at Lincoln Center. Once the party ended, it was back to putting out a paper for publisher Eleanor Tatum. Still, she found time to speak with Via Noravenka to talk about the past, the present, and the future of the century-old weekly and the black press in general.
100 years in existence, the remarkable history that Amsterdam News has, the challenges it met. Where do you see the paper going at this point?
The Amsterdam News has been around for 100 years, and I do see it being around for 100 more. The newspaper industry is in a tailspin right now, but community newspapers are in a unique position to not go with the same way of many other mainstream dailies. And I see the Amsterdam News hopefully growing in the next several years and decades, expanding our web presence and being even a stronger force in our community than it already is.
Speaking of your web presence, you just took the decision of digitizing your records, and at the recent gala you've raised about $850,000 towards that goal.
Yes.
Why make the records available online?
We've raised $850,000 towards our process of creating an archive, which not only includes digitizing the actual newspapers, but also digitizing all of our other records, including our photographs. We've got a few 100,000 photographs at the Amsterdam News, and we want the public to be able to have access to them, as well as having a research center where people can come and study what happened to blacks in New York over the last 100 years. And we want it to be a research center where scholars, as well as everyday people, can come in and you really do research to find out what their roots are.
Would the readers have to pay to access those records?
If they wanted to download archives and do research outside of our own archival center, yes. Online, yes. Online access would have a cost associated with it.
Some of the mainstream newspapers are weighing in on the options of whether or not to have their readers pay for new content online. Is Amsterdam News considering the same decision?
We're trying to figure out how we charge for content and if we charge for content and the best way to do that. We're not sure which way monetizes better, to charge for content or charge for advertising, because if you charge for advertising and content is free, you get a lot more hits than being able to, if you charge for access, then you don't have as many people visiting the site, so you can't charge as much for advertising. So it is a catch-22 situation. It all depends on really what you want to happen with the print product. But that being said, it also depends on where your readers are. Because if the people that are reading from the web are not New Yorkers, they can't pick up the newspaper. So if they're coming from other places, it really will not affect our actual print circulation.
Analysts have been signaling a decline of the black press in the last decades or so, and Amsterdam News has also suffered some loss of readership.
Actually, our readership is up almost 50% over the last year, and that has a lot to do with the Barack Obama editions of our newspaper and whatnot. So we've actually seen an increase in readership over the last year.
And as a consequence, you are hopeful, therefore, that you're going to regain the audience that you've once had? In
terms of circulation, we do hope that our circulation will go back up to the figures of the 1970s, which most newspapers are nowhere near. But the Amsterdam News is still a very strong, viable newspaper and a strong product.
Do you plan to reach out beyond the Black readership?
It's a Black newspaper, and we have readers of all colors, all shapes and all sizes, all religions, but the fact is we speak for the Black community, and we have no plans on changing that whatsoever.
Thank you, Eleanor.
Thank you.
The Amsterdam News wasn't the only recent media celebration. The New York Community Media Alliance held its 2009 IPPIES Awards ceremony, and the ethnic and immigrant press came out to honor its own. Independent Sources was there. Here's Adeola Oladele.
It's the 8th annual IPPIES Award dinner at Baruch College, where members of the ethnic media are being recognized for their hard work.
Armory could bring more than a shopping mall. Honorable mention goes to Alex Kratz from Norwood News.
This is the only award ceremony in New York City that honors excellence in English and non-English reporting by the ethnic and community media. The IPPIES are organized by the New York Community Media Alliance, whose mandate is to promote the ethnic media as a viable source of news and information. One of their major resources is their website, where they post translated stories from various ethnic media.
We get 20,000 readers a week, and it's a way to, government agencies, foundations, advocacy groups get to see what's being spoken about, in the communities.
Some New York politicians in attendance talked about the significance of the ethnic media.
These are news organizations that provide important information to so many thousands, tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people in this great city.
Great TV anchor Laura Flanders hosted the IPPIES. She started the evening with some political sarcasm.
We used to complain about the lack of women in the media. Sarah Palin solved that problem.
Thank you very much.
The keynote speakers at the event were Neil Shapiro, CEO of WNet.org, Fatima Shamar, Immigrant Affairs Commissioner for New York City, and Mark Hallet of the Chicago-based McCormick Foundation.
I think it was 2005, New America Media released a poll, and it was a national poll that showed that nearly 50 million Americans turned to ethnic media as their first and as their most trusted news source.
Some of the night's awards included Best Investigative Story, won by Seth Wasler from the Color Lines magazine. Best Feature Story went to The Independent. Oruba Al-Mansouri from the New Youth Connections won Best Editorial. And Best Photograph went to James Ferguson of Mount Hope Monitor. Some of the other winners shared their excitement.
We cover the ethnic media, we cover issues that affect ethnic communities in New York. So to win an honor for an issue like domestic violence in ethnic communities, it feels great.
This is just a good way of acknowledging that there is an independent ethnic immigrant press in New York City.
Congratulations, everybody, for introducing us to your world.
For Independent Sources, I'm Adeola Oladele.
That's our show. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next week. In the meantime, be independent-minded.
Amsterdam News, a happy 100 years. Good luck and keep continuing on.
I'm wishing you a 100-year anniversary, and I hope that you prosper for another 100 years and beyond that.
I would like to wish the Amsterdam one happy year anniversary. And please keep it out.
Amsterdam News, happy 100th anniversary from Priscilla.
I wish the Amsterdam News another 100 years and going forward, because I know they will be around, because you don't find too many newspapers that are still around like that.